Welcome to the next part in my video where I'm going to use bag 2 again, and this is step 5. What we're going to be doing here is we're going to be fitting the servo to the chassis and then putting the top plate on over the servo. So take our servo and we position it into the chassis, and that lines up very nicely. Move the servo mount over, and then what we're going to do is we're going to rotate the chassis over so we can see the holes at the bottom, and we're going to fit these countersunk M3x10 screws. And again, important to remember that you put in an aluminium screw into threaded aluminium, so don't over tighten these and make sure that you do use thread lock. Okay. So that part done. We put this screw in. Now what I have noticed is don't quite line up with the holes in the chassis. And what that does mean is the mounts on my servo, they're just a little bit too far apart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a file and just file those down, just to make sure that the servo mount can just move inwards, and we're talking about 3mm. So I'm just going to sand about 1.5 mm off the inside of each of these screws. So pause the camera and we'll resume when that's done. So I took a short break there, and while off camera, what I did was the lugs on the servo, I just filed about 1.5 mm off there, and now the holes in the chassis line up absolutely perfectly. So I'm going to use these M3x10 countersink screws. And again, because they're going into aluminium, you should use thread lock on these. There we go, it goes in nicely. Because I've sanded off just the right amount, it takes no force at all to put those in. I can screw those down till I feel resistance and stop there. Same with the other side. There we go. If I turn the chassis over, also off camera, I realised that I'd made an error in one of my earlier videos. When I mounted the steering bell cranks and the steering rack, I'd actually put them on. The bell cranks were rotated 180 degrees in the wrong direction, which resulted in the steering arm, the steering rack, being fitted the wrong way around. So just make sure that your ball studs point towards the front, and that's the correct orientation. What we're going to do now, we're going to place the top plate over, and that just sits really nicely into there. And we've just got these two cap heads. So button heads, and these are M3x14, and they'll just tighten down there. and I'm just looking at the steering arm, and looking down here, the steering arm, it's not quite parallel with the direction of the servo when it's fitted down. So the kit includes some servo spacers, and I mentioned earlier on, the instructions do tell you that in most cases they're not needed. If I just fit those spacers there between the servo and the servo mounts, that should bring that steering link perfectly in line, so it's running horizontally across the chassis. So once I've finished this step of the video, I'm actually going to do that. So put this screw down, there we go. So we're all done, and I'll see you in the next video where we should be fitting the front suspension arms. Thanks for watching, see you next time.